In the last lab, we went in and we played around with the actions on this point. If you look at the names of these actions, emergency active, emergency inactive, emergency auto, active, inactive, auto, and set, they're not really intuitive. When you right-click an object that's overwritable in graphics, these names come through. And so if I want to sit down and do a training session with my end user, and I want to show them how to override something, this just doesn't make any sense at all to your typical person. What I'm able to do is to edit the names of these slots. One of the views that I have available on this point, if I were to right click and go to views, is the AX slot sheet. This slot sheet's a little intimidating at first, so we're just going to focus on the pieces that we need to focus on for this part of the lab. You'll get a little more comfortable with slot sheets over time. I'm going to scroll down in my slot sheet until I find the green section, which are my action slots. And this emergency active slot is the one that I want to come to first. You'll see that its name, if I look up here at the top, it says the name of the action is emergency active. Now this is the built-in name. I can't change this, but what I can do is change the display name. So here's my emergency active action, and I don't want this to show up. I'd like to get rid of this so that when my customer right clicks, he never even sees these. He's going to only see these 3 actions here. Yeah, I'll just delete it. So I'm going to right click this slot, and the delete option is not there. The delete option is not there because this slot is what's referred to as frozen. If anything is frozen, it means it has to be there. You can't delete it. The developers are claiming ownership over this thing, and they're not going to let you get rid of it. So the only thing that I'm able to do is to hide this slot. I'm going to right-click on Emergency Active again and select the Config Flags menu. And the Config Flags menu lets me do some additional things slot by slot on any object in my station. I'm only going to select the hidden flag and hit OK. You'll notice nothing really happened here on the slot sheet other than this little H showed up. But if I navigate back to my wire sheet and I right click on my global occupancy point and I go to the actions menu, emergency active is no longer there. So let me go back to my slot sheet and let me hide these other ones. If I select emergency inactive and I hold down my control key on my keyboard and select emergency auto, I can do both of them at the same time. I'm also going to grab the set action. I don't necessarily want my end user being able to change the default position of my points in my station. So I will then, with all 3 of those selected, I let go of the control button, and I'm going to right click any one of the highlighted slots and go to Config Flags, select Hidden, and hit OK. You see the H's came through. I don't need to go back to my wire sheet to verify this. I can expand my training station in the tree, in my nav tree, expand config, expand my schedules folder, which is where this point lives. If I look at my locator bar here up at the top, it tells me that currently I'm in the config folder. Inside of the schedule folder, I'm looking at something having to do with the global occupancy point. And if I come all the way to the right, it tells me that I am on the AX slot sheet view of this global occupancy point. This takes a little while to get used to, so we will continue to navigate in the nav tree. If I select the global occupancy point here, it's the same as selecting it on the wire sheet. And if I right click, I can go to actions, and you'll notice that all 3 of those emergency actions are now gone. And so is my set command. So this is all my customer sees. I'm going to take this a step further. I don't want to have to explain to the customer what active, inactive, and auto means. I want this to be intuitive. When I'm building a station with the end user in mind, I don't want to have to explain everything about what's going on in the station. I want to make it as user-friendly as possible. So since I'm still on my slot sheet view here, I'm going to find my action slots that represent active, inactive, and auto. And if I double-click the active slot, it brings up the Set New Display Name box. I'm just going to type in something intuitive. Type in override occupied. I could put override to occupied if it made sense. But I think I'll just leave mine override occupied. Spaces are okay here. This is what your customer is going to see. Using spaces as a separator is perfectly fine. There we go. Hey, look at that. It changed the display name. So if I right-click this global occupancy point, go to Actions, now I've got override occupied in there. So let me change these, the inactive and auto slots. I'll double-click this inactive slot, and I'll change this one to say override unoccupied. And right-click just to take a look. Look at that. Change to override occupied, override unoccupied. All right, well, auto it's okay, but I don't want anybody to have any doubt as to what that action does. So I'll double click the auto slot and I'll type in release overrides. Now when I right click, or if my customer right clicks, this is what they see. Self-explanatory. I don't need to explain to anybody what's going on here. Override occupied, override unoccupied, release overrides. Again, I have the end user in mind, and the end user is not going through this class. They have no idea how this stuff is working behind the scenes. So it's our job to make sure that we make it as user-friendly as we can. I'm done editing. I'm going to go back to the wire sheet to prepare myself for the next lab. See you then.